Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Para Bellum Spotlight. I'm joined once again by Konstantinos.
Hello, everyone.
And this time we're going to be exploring the world of Ea and looking at those who came before. Mm-hmm. So, interesting little spotlight this week. I like the lovely pastoral scene to accompany it. It's very mellow and calming. In stark.
There is a meta hint with the art we decided to use here. I will not reveal more. I will let the conspiracy theorists go through it and come back to us.
Well, in that case, with letting people try and work out what is going on, I think we should probably kick things off with the spotlight itself is relatively brief compared to some of the other spotlights.
True.
But partly that is due to the fact that people don't really know what is going on with these structures, these cyclopean bits of architecture. Much like our own world, we look at things and try and ascribe a use for them in terms that we would understand, whereas they may be starkly different in reality as sort of lost in the mists of time.
That is true. I mean, there is a huge difference that we kind of know, that there were a lot of civilizations that rose and fell on the face of the world, on Ea. After the War of Hosts between the forces of creation and destruction, and a little during, in a way, already life had bloomed on the planet and civilizations have come and gone. Because this is something that perhaps we haven't really showcased because it's Genesis. It's not even ancient history. It's Genesis. It's considered as part of the Genesis of the world. That the dragons, the very early dragons, the elemental primordial dragons, were around for a very, very, very long time. Even the events with the spires happened a long time ago. And during that time, there were still a lot of shards that were of creation and destruction, both, that were very, let's say, uncompromising. I think it's a good word. And they were trying to overthrow the existing, not even regime, but the existing reality in a way. And they understood, perhaps much earlier than Haslier did, how the mortals of this world and life of this world has a power of its own that they can suckle on, essentially. So they would either try to do that or simply straight up recruit these different civilizations, and there's different species that rose and came and went, really. And the dragons would have none of this. Entire civilizations were corrupted one way or the other from either destruction shards or creation shards. And the dragons wanted, even though they weren't exactly of balance themselves, they were a weird achievement of balance, but not really a creation of balance. They eradicated them like with very little prejudice. They just saw them and went.
Burn it out, branch and root. It's the only way to be sure.
Yep, exactly. So what we are left with is some of the structures or creations or even the magical residues of entire civilizations that in very small parts of the world, and I know that in the text we only mentioned the 100 Kingdoms, but wink, wink, the art also hints at something else. And we can really tell that this was all over the world, not just in the area of the 100 Kingdoms. And perhaps not even only on the continent of Surtoris, but other, or Mannheim, but other continents as well. And it is interesting because on one hand, those locations don't really have any effect, or that's what most people think, that they don't really have any effect in modern history. But it is also mentioned in the text that they are very strongly magical
Yes.
in their own regard. Very maybe subtly so, but it is there. They are places of power exactly because pure shards were once active and contributed in the creation of these structures or landscapes better.
Yeah, I quite like the fact that those who came before isn't one civilization.
Yeah.
It could be many layers. They rise, they fall, and new civilizations take their place and fall into the same, I suppose, traps, and then either are collapsed or annihilated for their own good, because it gives this idea that you're looking at various regions may have more diverse structures within them. So maybe not every civilization is built upon the last one in the same area. But when viewed from the distant past, they all sort of intermingle. People assume that because there's a massive castle in a mountain here, that it must be related to the huge marbled valley over there. Whereas in reality, they may be completely disparate and dissociated over time.
That is very true. And I think the division in people's minds comes more from their own cultural myths about and tales about such tales. Like, for instance, in Galania, they think that, they were mermaids, obviously. They were a mermaid people, but it could have been something more akin to like lizard people or fish people, or no, don't get excited because we have the whole fish gnome thing.
Everybody has fish men. Yeah, it's, you look off the coast or maybe at low tide, there's the protrudence of some massive structure and therefore must be mer people or fish people, whereas in fact,
exactly.
It was above ground and just got dragoned into the ocean.
Exactly.
Point.
So different modern societies have created and cultures have created different myths about those places. But I think, yes, even in the educated minds, they seem like those were at that time before. And they are one thing. Even if they are not the same people, they are the same kind of time, at least, which that isn't true either. They were very disparate. And it's actually an idea that came to me when I was discussing with my wife's younger sister when she started playing. Well, I will just mention the second part, an Odyssey game, let's call it that. So as to not name any brands. And she was very excited and she wanted to talk to me about it. And I made her realize that, but what you've read about ancient Greek mythology and ancient Greek history is not one era. From the time of the Iliad to the time where it was written and to the time where the Parthenon was built, there's almost 1,000 years gap.
Yeah.
And a lot of happened during those years. Like Hercules or the Iliad were already mythology for Pericles.
Yeah.
And
you get that same sort of thing coming through here where
exactly
people look at one that sticks out at me is the glade, the twisted glade with these majestic black sequoias where their branches sort of weave together to form platforms, and people think it's a remnants of the Weaver Conclave, but in actual fact it's much, much older than that. They're attributing to it based on their own reality, whereas in actual fact it's something so far removed that they couldn't comprehend it, I suppose.
And the interesting thing is that we cannot even know if even the weavers, and granted the mass exodus from their own homeworld happened later, but the spires had been established a very long time ago as research and scientific outposts at first. So it goes way, way, way back. Some of these sites go way, way, way back. And for now, they seem like a nice fantasy touch in a world of fantasy, you know? And indeed, partly it is. But we will see that. I think the important thing to remember here is that kind of life tends to move in cycles. And that's why I think partly we put those things there, because we want people to, and when I say people, I mean both the community, but also the people of our world, to kind of have these cautionary messages that be careful, because this happens. This can happen. Entire civilizations can go, and if the Fold doesn't tell you this, and you now start to make that into myth, look around, because there are other sites of similar levels of annihilation of an entire civilization.
I have to say, I really enjoyed this spotlight for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I'm a huge fan of mythos in the background. So the idea of cyclopean structures and ancient civilizations from who knows where, potentially even, space travelers before the spires arrived. That just speaks to me on so many levels, because I look at that and I go, I could just run an RPG screaming through the world of EA and send people off and into these caverns or mountains without knowing what's coming out the other side. And I would love to see an RPG in that vein at some point. But also,
for now, no comment.
Not tease you. But also the idea of things like this, things like the Twisted Glade as scenery and inspiration for the gaming table as well, that people could have these structures or areas or do something a bit unusual for their tabletop as well, rather than just always having the sort of, I don't want to say generic, but we all know generic,
I get what you mean.
Hills, bit of ruin, trees, whatever it is, but just, having some monstrous thing erupting from the side of the board or in the middle of the tabletop that people are having to deal with, and potentially even then when they're playing, having rules for it. Maybe magic gets a bit wild if you're too close to the big obelisk in the middle of the table and you don't know exactly how it's going to affect you. Mix it up a bit, add a bit of.
All those are excellent ideas, if I'm honest. I don't know if you noticed that now that you mentioned the monster, that we have a special holiday event with the Abominable Abomination.
I've noticed him and his delightful color scheme of reds and greens on the armor. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's obviously the time of year to do abominations and the like. It's a bit more interesting than Krampus coming, but abomination butting his way into your house to deliver presents.
I mention it because we are thinking of doing more such events. We were very excited about this kind of first blood encounter, let's say, special encounter where both players or even more kind of tackle the same foe. We are planning of doing more than that, and it's an excellent idea that we could use exactly those kind of sites. But as you mentioned, you could also use them for the table as scenery or as objective markers, that there's something in those planes that apparently is very strong magically, and we both want it, so let's fight over it, the good old wargaming way.
Oh God, yes. There you have it, folks. If you fancy checking out the spotlight, it's already up over at Para Bellum Wargames website. There'll be a link below, and if you've any questions, please feel free to drop them down below as well. Let us know how you plan on taking what's come from those before. Until next time, bye-bye.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.